In classical Athens, poisoning occupied a legal grey zone, while homicide with a blade had clear penalties. A death by unknown substance forced courts to weigh motive against mystery. Because no chemical tests existed, juries relied on witness testimony, prior feuds, and the accused's access to rare herbs. This uncertainty made poison trials volatile. A widow who stored hellebore for fevers could be blamed for a rival's collapse. A slave's death might expose a network of ingredients tied to a household dispute. Jurors debated not only guilt, but whether the substance had been intended to heal or to kill. As cases multiplied, Athenians grew wary of the healers themselves. Courts demanded physicians explain their mixtures under oath, yet without standard dosages or labelling, even reputable medical men risked suspicion. The same drugs could shift meaning overnight. Control no longer depended on law alone. It relied on trust that kept breaking. In royal courts stretching from Alexandria to Rome, suspicions around sudden deaths blurred the line between household medicine and premeditated murder. As elite families adopted Greek pharmacology, home remedies involved hundreds of preparations, some imported, some toxic. But without regulation, mixtures lacked external verification. Only trust, wealth, or fear could shield reputation. This climate fed the rise of the so-called poisoner, a social role forged more through fear than fact. In high-profile scandals, slaves, concubines, or physicians were accused of discreetly administering fatal doses over days or weeks. Trials rarely produced proof, but the pattern invited one conclusion: poison was a profession cloaked in medicine. Mithridates VI of Pontus responded by isolating himself in remote fortresses and consuming small amounts of suspect substances, testing what his food, servants, or rivals might conceal. His obsession birthed antidote regimes involving dozens of ingredients, but this method had a flaw. It trained no one but him and solved nothing once he died. After Mithridates' death, his antidote formulas didn't vanish. They circulated. Roman generals seized his archives, and elite households began collecting the recipes, not to replicate his regime, but to defend against the kind of threats his paranoia had foreshadowed. Poison, once rumor, was treated as a ruling class hazard, but reproduction was no guarantee of effectiveness. The recipes cited dozens of ingredients, some unavailable, others misidentified or adulterated in transit. Wealthy Romans still purchased them in bulk, often alongside arsenic, aconite, or opium, stored not separately but together. The line between shield and sword narrowed with each transaction. A system emerged in which antidotes shared cabinets with toxins, and status depended on access, not knowledge. Households paid Greek-trained physicians to oversee these mixtures, yet few could verify their contents. The more antidotes appeared, the more they signaled danger, and the harder it became to tell protection from preparation. Antidotes did not quiet the imperial palace. Instead, they deepened suspicion. When Germanicus, the heir apparent, died suddenly in Syria, rumors spread faster than physicians. His body bore no visible wounds, yet whispers of cursed soil, tampered food, and treacherous servants followed his return to Rome in ashes, not triumph. The emperor's circle now treated proximity as potential threat. In the Julio-Claudian household, even meals required choreography, tasters, testers, and dictated menus. But the fear of public backlash made open executions costly. Poison, slow, silent, and deniable, became the method of preference when inheritance or insult hardened into plot. Under Nero, professionals like Locusta were shielded, not punished. Kept in imperial protection, she prepared mixtures on demand, sometimes for favourites, sometimes for rivals. The empire now tolerated poisoners, not as criminals, but as instruments of calculation. This normalization did not solve instability, it simply buried it deeper inside the court. By the mid-1st century CE, the empire's use of professional poisoners exposed a critical vulnerability. Silence could not be maintained. Trials turned servants into witnesses, leftovers into evidence, and accusations into political weapons. As secrets leaked into the courts, written knowledge emerged as the new front line, publicly visible, harder to erase. Works by figures like Dioscorides and Pliny the Elder catalogued hundreds of toxins: henbane, arsenic, scorpion venom, combining field observations with hearsay. These texts aim to alert readers to concealed dangers, but unintentionally created durable indexes of method and material. Because copying was common, instructions spread faster than control could keep up. Once copied in libraries and physician households, these texts granted access beyond their intended audience. Novices now knew which berries mimicked fevers or how powdered stones could swell the tongue. The risk was no longer secrecy, it was overexposure. The empire had tried to hide poisoners, it had instead built their manual. As imperial control fractured, surviving institutions turned inward. Monasteries preserved herbal texts once meant for elite physicians, while local courts relied on oral cures, household remedies, and the authority of relics. With no central enforcement, medicinal practice fused with ritual as rulers sought protection through both recipes and sacred routines. But ancient antidotes failed against new plagues and unknown ailments. When local bishops or kings fell ill, physicians offered no guarantees, only guesses or charms. In response, noble households elevated the role of food tasters and adopted ceremonial routines. Incense at mealtimes, fasting before banquets, or having monks bless utensils and water. None of these precautions resolved the core dilemma. A sudden death still eroded trust faster than any vow of safety. With written antidote knowledge diluted by copying errors and folk editions, misidentification became frequent. By the 6th century, every protection, taster, relic, or text could be seen as flawed. Doubt became permanent. Arabic-speaking scholars inherited a fragmented medical canon. Translation centers in Baghdad and Jundishapur focused first on recovering lost Greek texts, including Galen and Dioscorides. But physicians like Hunayn ibn Ishaq didn't merely transcribe, they restructured lists of toxins by source, symptoms, and timing, blending Hippocratic logic with Islamic legal priorities. Yet accurate diagnosis proved elusive. Court physicians tasked with detecting poison hadn't witnessed the ingestion, only its aftermath: vomiting, paleness, tremors. Manuals commissioned for caliphs disagreed on whether garlic neutralized toxins or concealed them, and whether rosewater or silver cups could reveal tampering. Theory outpaced method. Consensus proved unstable. The result was not clarity, but a proliferation of protocols. Each emir or vizier received different culinary restrictions, purification rituals, or antidotes depending on which physician held sway. Detection became political, not medical, and because no method was definitive, every failed prescription risked implicating the healer instead of the poisoner. By the 1200s, arsenic trioxide, cinnabar, and other alchemical compounds arrived in Europe through Mediterranean trade routes, often as pigments or imported drugs. Monastic infirmaries and court apothecaries made use of them, but few understood them fully. When rulers sickened suddenly, foreign ingredients became immediate suspects, regardless of evidence. Tasters offered no certainty, especially when poisons could mimic fever or plague. During outbreaks of the Black Death, symptoms overlapped with known poisoning signs: darkened limbs, vomiting, convulsions. Desperation broke the distinction between cause and suspicion. Accusations surged, sometimes fueled by political tension, other times directed at Jews, lepers, or enemies of convenience. No formal inquiries could neutralize these fears. Courts used confessions under torture, but rarely found consistent evidence or surviving substances. This loosened the threshold for blame. Any healer, cook, or foreign merchant near a sickbed could be targeted. Once panic replaced procedure, poisoner hunts required no poison, only suffering to explain. In Renaissance Italy, especially in Rome and Florence, power operated in tight circles where inheritance, rivalry, and papal favour could shift overnight. Families like the Medici and Borgia increasingly looked to apothecaries for more than medicine. Lustrous powders, bitter syrups, and sealed capsules were requested without names, only results. What mattered wasn't overt violence, but discretion that left no blade or bruise behind. Yet discretion bred ambiguity. Substances like cantarella, possibly a compound of arsenic and vinegar, became infamous without ever being confirmed. Apothecaries could claim legitimate use. The same ingredients preserved cosmetics or treated skin lesions. With recipes unstandardized and motives concealed in court whispers, suspicion grew faster than proof. Any death with unclear symptoms could spark rumors of papal plots or widow's vengeance. The criminal threshold collapsed under plausible deniability. Since most ingredients doubled as medicines, courts rarely prosecuted unless a servant confessed or a rival was caught buying in bulk. This protected suppliers while forcing elites into private countermeasures, hiring testers, disinviting guests, or secretly rotating food staff. The fear hardened, not just of poison itself, but of what no tribunal could clearly prove. By the 1670s in France, fear no longer centered on royal succession or foreign rivals. It spiraled through households via rumors of potions, powdered substances, and buried charms. Fortune-tellers operating as alchemists or midwives sold poisons alongside love spells and abortifacients. Their clients included maids, nobles, and sometimes high-born wives. The arrest of one accused poisoner triggered a flood. Under torture, names poured out: apothecaries, priests, midwives, and aristocrats. The affair of the poisons exposed a full supply chain. Ingredients sourced from pharmacy stalls, mixed in kitchens, and delivered at salons. As trials advanced, even court officials fell under scrutiny. Louis XIV responded with a specialized chamber under state control, the Chambre Ardente. It bypassed local courts and issued swift sentences, including executions and exile. But the crackdown had limits. While burnings silenced suppliers, it could not stem demand. Punishment removed individuals, not the network that kept rebuilding beneath the surface.